Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about pricey software. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how come a decent web shop with a cashier system for your in-store costs for your store costs like 10,000 euros just to build it, and then afterwards still a monthly fee of €100 per month, even if you have less than 500 different items to sell. The web has existed for 25 years, and that stuff still costs quite a lot. Why is that? Why hasn't this become cheaper over the years? Why isn't there somehow custom software for smaller businesses for a smaller price? To me, it seems only bigger companies have decent software tools because they are the only ones who can afford it. Well, yes, that is. Isn't that the fallacy of capitalism, or like that's kind of the fallacy of the naive person, I would say. When it comes to capitalism, you think that as we go along, the things that are usually kind of new, they usually are costly because we haven't standardized everything around it, and then it gets cheaper over time, like cars or television sets or computers or stuff like that. That's really only true if at least in my very narrow perspective, if one specific thing happens, and that is that I can't force you to pay me as much as I want if I'm selling you something. If I take a look at the pharmaceutical companies, or which pick your poison in terms of like the biggest corporations in the world who own us all. Like we are bordering on how we have to find ways to make the law get them to not price us out of existence for things that in many cases, in some cases it is expensive to produce medicine, as an example, but in some cases it's like the profit margin is ridiculous for them, but they can get away with it. And the same thing goes for like agencies or people who are selling software services, because they know that they can actually price you that way because their competitors are also pricing you that way, and they know that you are going to pay for it. Because if you want to have a shop today, if you want to sell anything, the web is where it's at. That's why I am here. This is why, that's what all of this money that we software developers get, that's where it's coming from. Because the e-commerce is like, that sphere is enormous. I wouldn't be surprised if, we're already kind of heading in that direction, where like regular stores, where you actually go as you used, like how you used to go to stores and so forth, that's kind of becoming an ancient relic type of deal. It's getting very quickly to the point where we might have distribution centers, but having like the traditional, hey, I'm gonna go to this little place over here that sells a fraction of the things that I can get on Amazon or whatever, and buy it there. Well, you're kind of screwed as a small retailer. And that's the thing. You need in many cases a web presence to make a decent living in many cases. And there are cheaper alternatives out there. An example would be WordPress. WordPress would be a very good example of this. Is something, if you have a small business, don't really need like a strong web presence or a brand or any branded thing, so forth, you can do something small with WordPress. And there are other solutions that may actually look nicer than WordPress. And that's great for someone who doesn't have like the really serious money to spend on an agency or things like that, or hire a developer. One thing that I can tell you though is that the prices, as I was saying earlier, like the price of like 10,000 euros, that's an enormous amount of money for sure. That price, if you were to pay an average software developer, so let's take for the sake of argument that you were to ask me, Frederick, can you build this thing for me? And then ask me, let's say that I give you a friendship price. Well, my salary Like if I were to, depending on what you're looking for now, if you're going to have a web shop, depending on how many hours I have to put in it, my estimate is for a small system, it will not take me, let's say, a full month of full-time work to do that. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that that is the case. Then, if it took me a month to build that thing for the salary I'm being paid now at my current company, I would still not reach that number. It would take me, well, like an average software developer, like if they were to do it for like the salary they get paid at a company, they would never like charge you that amount of money. If it's a friend who does it, they might do it like at 10, like a fraction of the cost. Like I mean, I have another friend who he has a small retailing business, and he got in touch with someone he knew who was a software developer, and I think that it was roughly the sort of money that you're talking about now, 9,000 euros or something like that from an agency, and he did it for, I think, 800 euros or something like that. Like it was nothing in comparison to what they're charging, because I mean, honest to God, guys, it's for a software developer, building a web shop is not a problem, depending on what you're doing. It's because, and the cost isn't really down to that, oh, this is such an enormous costly thing to do. I mean, shit, if you have a laptop and you have the skills, you can literally build this thing at no expense apart from the hours you put in. Like you have no materials, no nothing. You have to, that's what it is, right? It's just the fact that this thing is valuable, and so we capitalize that, and the agencies and the companies, they need to make a profit from it, and there's not really much more to it. So if you're buying software as a small business, the best investment you can make is literally to hopefully get a recommendation from someone who knows, like a good software developer who can do the whole thing, or otherwise you have to go and, like, just as with anything. I mean, I could repaint my apartment, but I would probably fuck it up. So I pay somebody more money than it would cost me to do it myself, to do it well. And it's the same deal here. So what I want you to take away from this is that the reason why software is not, it's depending on what you mean by getting cheaper, because you have to remember, back depending on the system you're building, it can be a lot cheaper than it used to be. Like, I mean, a lot of the tools that we have today has reduced the cost of of producing software by quite a lot. But yes, for small retailing businesses and so forth, it's it's still really expensive. But it's also, I mean, there was a time when it was really only the bigger companies who could afford even a decent looking system. So yeah, definitely still pricey, but it's not like it's not affordable to a small company. For some companies, for sure, it's going to be too pricey. But honestly, the reason why it stays this way is because of the value that the web brings. I promise you, those prices are going to start dipping if we ever get to a point where someone invents a customization solution or a platform that is so standard that it's really only there you need to have things. I mean, there are examples of that. Amazon is an example of that. Etsy is an example of that. Like these standard platforms where if you have a business, this is kind of where you go. You don't create your own thing necessarily for like a lot of money with your own retailing or cashiers types of thing. You just buy it from somebody else, and then you hope that your product brand or whatever you're selling can do the rest for you. That's not always feasible, and if that's not feasible to you, there are a lot of freelancers who might take less. You might be able to pay them less. You can look at Upwork or whatever, or you can use WordPress or similar sorts of solutions or other services to keep the costs down. But if you need a really completely custom thing, those are the prices that you're going to have to pay, unless you know somebody. Have a great day.